I'm delighted today to be speaking with Mudar Zahran, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who is a Jordanian-Palestinian writer and academic who is currently in the UK as in political exile as a refugee. He serves as the Secretary General of the Jordanian Opposition Coalition, which I understand is a group which advocates for regime change and democracy in Jordan. And he has been very vocal in advocating a policy which has been coined Jordan is Palestine. Now, a couple of days ago, Mudar, you posted an interesting statement on X, which said, "The Middle East, the eerie quiet before the perfect storm, Jordan first." Do you want to elaborate on that and tell the viewers if there's any more background information you'd like to tell us about yourself before answering that question?
First of all, thanks for having me. There's a very, very beloved children's book called The Little Prince. It's a French, one of the classics, The Little Prince. In The Little Prince, it reads, all important things are invisible. And this applies to the Middle East. What you see in major mainstream media, what you see even statements, official statements, the more you see of them, the more you know that what's really going down is rather different, and the significant parts are being overlooked. As a career politician, as someone who spent a lifetime working let's say, in the clandestine world, I can assure you that the Middle East is up for a roller coaster in a good way. First of all, a year ago, I was posting, actually 2 years ago, that all Iran affiliated militias and bodies and all the countries supporting Iran will pay a price. And many of my fellow Muslims and Arabs were very skeptical because for the past, since Saddam was toppled, we've had a Western establishment that was very supportive and tolerant of Iran and Armenians. Now we see Iran and Armenians being knocked down one by one. Here's the deal, and to make it simple with no much drama or suspense. Everyone associated with Iran, everyone from the radical Islam cabal, will be taken out one by one. And for those who really follow my work, like the Jordanian Intelligence Department and others, read my lips. Hamas will never rule Gaza. Hamas will never be able to reestablish itself in Gaza, and Hamas top and middle management or leadership will leave Gaza. I repeat, Hamas will leave Gaza. People get, kind of frustrated with what this official says and what that official says that. Reality is Hamas signed up for it. Hamas is going to leave Gaza. Gaza is very important. Something in not political science, in military science called the point of gravity. The point of gravity of the world is the Middle East. The point of gravity of the Middle East is the Levant. The point of gravity of the Levant is Gaza. Gaza connects 3 continents. This is why the powers that be made sure they handed Gaza to a terror group 20 years ago. And who presided over that? George W. Bush. There is a Catholic marriage between radical Islam and the Western establishment. This is why they keep propping up the Muslim Brotherhood, propping up Islamist regimes, propping up anyone who supports Islam, and including so-called countries who signed up for peace with Israel, like Jordan, like Egypt and others. They support radical Islamists openly. Example of that is the fact that the king of Hamas regularly welcomes Hamas leaders into Jordan, into his own mansion. The fact that Hamas, quote unquote, is officially the Palestine chapter of Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood. So many people do not even expect that Arab regimes are very supportive of the Islamists. This whole makeup, globalist World Economic Forum mess that has been put in place for 120 years now is going to go. And one very familiar friend of ours is going to go again. He's going to die and never return or be reincarnated. That's called the Arab-Israeli conflict. The Palestinians will have a state, and the Jews will eventually have their own sovereign state. And the policy, the well-established Western policy of sustaining the Arab-Israeli conflict is going to end. Let me end this statement on this note. Most analysts, with all due respect to them, not trying to go on an ego trip here, most of them do not even go beneath the surface. They analyze the news. Those who know would know that the problem is literally that the United States is in danger now. The United States is in a strategic danger because of China, an enemy who's very formidable, has a huge reservoir of human resource, wealth beyond any means you can even imagine, and they have the technology. And those people, the Chinese, have been taking Middle Eastern countries one by one. They almost took over Israel 5 years ago through bribes, through buying companies, hiring families of powerful people as board members in Chinese companies. So America has to deal with that. And the only way America can deal with that is if they have a quiet Middle East. This is why Arab-Israeli conflict now is wanted dead, not alive, and that's why it's going to die soon.
Okay, but as you said, it's been going on for 120 years. Surely there have been times in the past where there hasn't been that globalist pressure for the continuation of the conflict. You're saying that the difference now is this danger to the US presented by China. But why is that different from stuff like this we've seen in the previous 120 years? Why are you so confident that now this is going to change it? Especially given what you said about your confidence in Hamas going, all of the evidence seems to point to the fact that Hamas is very determined to stay. And as you say, the Egyptians and the Jordanians are going to endeavor surely to make sure they do stay. So what's going to make that change?
Okay, what's going to change is the fact that the way things are done in the Middle East. You know, from a Western Hebrew mindset, the typical Jewish mindset is tichon ha'olam, common sense. Let's talk it out. This is not how things are done in the Arab world and the Middle East. In the Middle East, people do what they have to, not what they think is right. People respond to one common sense, which is fear. Not common sense, but rather the common sense of fear. I'll make it very simple. Why has Hamas been able to fight one of the strongest armies in the world for the past 2 years? Because Hamas has been aided and abetted by Arab countries. And I'll give you very nasty examples. Anyone in the military would tell you that the first thing that runs out in a war is ammunition. Hamas has had ammunition for 2 years and counting. Where did that come from? I can authoritatively tell you from very well-informed military sources in the West that the Egyptian borders have been open. Full knowledge of the Egyptian military intelligence, they have been open. Also, Jordan has provided.
Can I just clarify that point? So when you say the Egyptian border has been open, are you saying that not all of the tunnels between Egypt and Gaza were sealed? Because certainly I assume they're not allowing. The Israelis must have been monitoring stuff going across the border. Does that mean it's coming through, for example, by drones at night or something like that? How physically have they been doing that?
Tunnels. The Israelis, the only way for Israelis to stop the tunnels, and they've been talking about it, is to build a concrete or a metal barrier across the borders with Egypt. The tunnels are alive and well. I'll give you an example. iPhone 17 was introduced in Gaza before it was introduced in Britain. The tunnels are alive and well. The tunnels are excellent business, and the Egyptian army, the Egyptian military intelligence is known to have colluded with Hamas, and the same way the Jordanian Department of Intelligence have and will and has and remains in bed with Hamas. This is public knowledge. This is not some conspiracy theory. I'll quote Khalid Mishal, Hamas leader. in speaking at a conference in Turkey in 2016. He said, quote unquote, "We are always daily coordinating with the brothers in the Jordanian government. Jordan is too close to Hamas. Egypt is too close to Hamas. Turkey is too close to Hamas. And there are other Arab countries, so-called the Arab Gulf, the Persian Gulf. Of course, we call it the Arab Gulf. The Arab Gulf countries, except for one, they're all colluding with Hamas. The game is all. The game, I don't care, how many accords you see and people, waving Israeli flags and welcoming Israeli tourists. And this is all, a propaganda nonsense, which the Arabs play very, very well, which is, saying something and doing something completely opposite. Let me sum up. All Arab countries were opposed to the ceasefire because they wanted the war to continue as soon as possible. An official from an Arab Gulf state told me personally that, quote unquote, his government expected the Gaza war to continue for up to 10 years, just like Syria. Why did the truce happen? This is the dynamics most people are not aware of. It happened only because Trump gathered Arab countries in New York at the UN and threatened them that unless they cut the Nashkite, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the word Nashkite, unless they cut the nonsense, unless they cut the stupidity, there will be hell to pay. So Qatar provides the money, Egypt provides the logistics, Jordan provides the intelligence, and I can go on and on with details which will shock you. So Trump told them, unless you stop it, you're going to have to pay. So now with Hamas benefactors scared, Hamas doesn't have a lot that they can do. They would still try to play with it. They will make a lot of stupid statements, a lot of silly statements, which will provoke a lot of people. I've seen people lately going, the sky is going to fall. Hamas is being spoken to directly. Mark my words. We're looking at a new chapter for the Middle East. The Muslim Brotherhood is going to go. Mark every word I'm saying. Muslim Brotherhood is going to be eventually, sometime in the foreseen future, designated, could be a year or two, designated as a terror organization. That's a huge blow to Jordan because the headquarters of the global Muslim Brotherhood is in Jordan. The Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood, under the Jordanian Intelligence Command, controls all Muslim Brotherhood across the world. And let me quote for you what King Hussein said. He said, quote unquote, "The Muslim Brotherhood is the Hashemites regime's own political party." So this is going to send shock waves across the region because Trump wants two things gone.
Okay, but then you're basing your confidence entirely on the power of the threats from Trump. And I'm, let's say, I'll play devil's advocate here and say that these Arabs that you're talking about have always played the long game. And 3 years is all they've got to last out of Trump. That's all they've got to last. And they just have to keep it going for that long. If they've kept it going all this time, why do you feel confident that Trump's threats is going to stop them completely forever? I can't see how that's possible.
This is the smartest question. I've done more than 1,000 interviews over the past 15 years, from major networks to local podcasts. And this is the smartest question I've ever received. Honest remark. We've got only 3 years. This has to be done over 3 years. And you seem to, actually, you should have gone into psychology, sir. You seem to understand Arab psychology, which is buying time. They want to buy time as much as possible. And things will change because things are very critical with China moving very fast in the region. And, the powers that be really preparing and hoping for a third World War III across the region, starting in the region. So we have very little time to change things around. And this will involve annihilating the Muslim Brotherhood, regime change in Iran, which will be an internal regime change like the Soviet regime change. And I'm not just improvising this. This is information. And on top of it, we might and we will see a Palestinian state to call the whole conflict quits. And that Palestinian state, regardless of how much of the West Bank or Israel will be involved, could be 1%, could be 0%, but it will involve Jordan either way. This has to be done over the next 3 years. It's very frustrating to see some of the, patriots and some of the Zionists and some Israelis that do not understand how time critical this whole operation is.
Okay, so onto this the Muslim Brotherhood issue then, right? You're saying, I mean, at the moment, as I understand, it's not even banned. I mean, Trump hasn't actually banned it in the US even. So why has that not
No,
happened?
it didn't happen because a lot of Arab countries, first of all, Trump has a lot on his plate, and he's been fighting, an uphill battle. And this is not a one-man job. Most people, they go like, Trump did this, Trump did that. Let me explain, please. Trump represents a whole apparatus of patriotism, whether you are pro-patriot faction or pro-MAGA, against MAGA, whatever you want to call him. He represents a certain faction, which is the anti-war thesis, which is the old faction like Cheney, Obama, and Bush, the worst of them all, Bush W. The theory was war is peace. They were open about that. They were open. They didn't even bother to hide it. They thought that bringing more war and military action across the world will bring them peace and prosperity. On the other hand, Trump thinks that peace and prosperity happens with no war, and that's why he wanted the Gaza war finished and the Ukraine war finished, and eventually preventing any stupid wars in Europe and elsewhere. So, with that being the case, Trump has not banned the Muslim Brotherhood yet. But one of the main reasons of delaying this move is the fact that you have Arab dictators advocating for the Muslim Brotherhood in Washington.
Yeah.
An example of that was a tweet in 2017, when King Abdullah of Jordan went to visit Trump for the first time. A Washington-based Arab journalist tweeted, you can read the tweet. She's very close. She's not close, but she's very friendly to the Hashemite regime. Her name is Joyce Karam. You can look up the tweet, 2017. Yeah. She noted that the main differences between the king and Trump is the fact that the king is against banning the Muslim Brotherhood. So the Muslim Brotherhood comes with a whole Arab apparatus banning it. And you will be surprised. I mean, how many so-called secular Arab countries actually support the Muslim Brotherhood? And an example of that, again, is Gulf states. Except for one Gulf state, all Gulf states support the Muslim Brotherhood. Yes, they might ban him at home, but they actually support him at other places.
Is the exception the UAE?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question.
Okay, all right, but keeping on this thing, so it's central. But as you
The
said, you've
exception
identified.
is Saudi Arabia. Hold on, I'm going to make the risk. The only exception is Saudi Arabia.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Also, the UAE, as much as I love the leader, Mohammed bin Zayed, the UAE their position has been very aligned to Jordan's positions on most issues. The last was the UAE threatened that if Israel was to annex the West Bank, the UAE would end the peace treaty. And guess who made the statement? The statement was made by the UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nusayba. Lana Nusayba is a Palestinian, a UAE of Palestinian heritage. So UAE, I hate to tell you this, as much as you may not believe it, despite the verbal appeasement and sending you people who say, oh, we support Israel, UAE, action-wise, has always been Team Palestine. You go to the track record voting in the UN, the very, very public rebuke of Israel over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Something that's very well-founded and academic is bias to certain results. So some people, because they have their own biases in research, they would come up with results which are totally aligned to their belief, not what's actually on the ground. This is my advice to everyone who wants to survive in this crazy place called the Middle East. Focus on what people do rather than what they say. And since you've asked me about the United Arab Emirates, I love them to death. Many of my friends from there, some of them officials, and I can tell you, UAE's action has always been Team Palestine.
But then so has Saudis, even since, the so-called thawing of relations in the last 3 or 4 years.
The Saudis are honest. The Saudis don't have an embassy in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv. The Saudis, they would sit with you and tell you exactly what they want. Many other Arab countries would sit with Israeli officials and tell them, we don't want Palestinians. We don't believe in Palestine. The Palestinians are troublemakers. We don't care for them. And then they would sit with Trump and tell him, we want a Palestinian state at any cost. These are not my words. These are the words of very well-informed officials in Jerusalem and Washington.
Okay, so still thinking about this whole Muslim Brotherhood issue, as you say, that Trump in the US has got an issue there because there are significant forces which are pressuring him not to prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood. But in Europe, in Western Europe, take the UK, for example, as well as many other countries in Europe, they're even more committed to ensuring that the Muslim Brotherhood is not prescribed. And it's because in these cases, I suggest, even more pressure from essentially the Muslim Brotherhood members who have very, very senior positions in a lot of the institutions of these countries. And in the UK, of course, we've got many of these people in Parliament now. So it's not going to happen, is it?
I don't know about them being in Parliament, but I know the UK, the policy standard, British foreign policy is serving as a social worker or a therapist. So basically, you talk to both sides. You become friends with both sides. You become the go-to place for both sides fighting. So in that regard, they open the door for also the Muslim Brotherhood at home in the UK, and they've empowered them in a lot of cases. And remember, the globalist establishment in the UK is openly one of the oldest of all globalist institutions, but the UK is not the main problem. The Muslim Brotherhood might be more vocal in the UK, but they are not as strategic in the UK as they are some other places. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood, Germany as a government is has historically, especially under Merkel, been very, very supportive of Islamists. Their presence in Syria, Jordan, elsewhere, they have been very tolerant of radical Islamist migrants. This is all deliberate. This is not just stupidity. So the powerhouses with the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe are mainly, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and France. Germany and France top thing. This is not about their presence. This is about who mongers policy beneficial to them in the Middle East, because those countries are fully convinced that the best method to control the Middle East and make use of it is to sustain the status quo, which to sustain the status quo, you need radical Islamists.
Yeah.
And they have been very fondly supportive of radical Islam entering Europe and tolerated it.
Okay, let's now go back to this issue of you called it, the threats that Trump made, which led to the ceasefire. In what way has he threatened them? And how would he actually follow through on those threats if they don't accept what he is proposing?
Okay, you are tough. I have to give you that, because you're asking the questions I really don't want to answer. But I always run forward. I never run from something. I run into it, into the eye of the storm. So you asked, you're gonna get the answer, which I would have rather not spoken about it.
Well, why would you rather have not spoken about it?
Because I'm gonna piss off a lot of people, and I'm gonna come very close to classified information, which I will never be able to reveal, because I don't want to destroy my security clearance.
Well, I don't want you to get into trouble here.
No, it's okay. Nothing can get me into trouble, but I'll do my best. Israel attacked Doha with F-16s. Israel's F-16s they're no longer, but used to be one of the most advanced F-16s in the world. Now Lockheed Martin produces F-16s a little bit better than the one Israel has. For 20 years, the Israelis had the best. So Very advanced F-16s. They flew a couple squadrons, I believe. Oh, actually, just possibly 12. I remember now, 12 jets into Doha and attacked the Hamas leaders. Doha, Qatar has the best ground to air defense system in the world, because it's the one Americans have to protect their base called Al Udeid, the largest American base in the Middle East. So Americans saw the F-16s coming, 10,000 miles away. They've got AWACSs, they've got satellite systems. They knew the F-16s with the Magen David on them were in the air. And some boys are talking Hebrew over the radio. They knew the Israelis are here. They could have shot down every single F-16 in Doha's air with no questions asked, because I've been in the field. I can't talk about my military service at all, but I've seen this. I know this firsthand for a certain reason. So, they can call him a bogey in the air. They can make contact, tell them to go away, or like within, at best, 2 minutes, 60 seconds, shoot them down. The hit on Doha could have never happened without a blind turn and a blind eye from the Americans. Bottom line is, that was a humiliation, a slap in the face. Trump didn't do it, but Trump didn't do anything about it. So if you let your sidekick attacks and beats up someone, and you turn a blind eye or you don't do anything about it, that's endorsement. Bottom line, whatever you wish to call it, it was a very harsh lesson, because Doha, Qatar, they think they are untouchable. They think they are, in a completely different utopia of wealth and gas money. That said, everyone else became scared. And so, remember, all those Arab dictators, they have skeletons in their closets. They have drug money laundered. They have everything in the book: terror support, terror financing, money laundering, you name it. So it's easy, very easy to turn each and every one of them, actually, except for a few. It's easy to turn them into another Noriega. You saw what happened to Noriega. So it's easy to scare him, only that other administrations didn't want to do that. Trump has the chutzpah and the guts to do it, and he did.
Okay, so let me clarify my understanding, is that it's the leaders of those countries, not just Qatar, but of course it has to be, as you say, countries like Egypt and Jordan in particular. It's the leaders who now feel sufficiently threatened by Trump that they will simply stop the many years of support for the Muslim Brotherhood that they have provided so far. Simply that threat to their personal security?
No. No, Trump is not an assassin. It's easier than that. They can do it by the law. Bondi, the attorney general, could issue subpoenas for all of them, or arrest warrants for all of them.
Or whatever, yeah. I mean,
but that's number one. Number two, the talk was not about the Muslim Brotherhood at all. The talk at the United Nations was clearly about Hamas, that they needed to stop Hamas and to convince Hamas to basically cut Hamas off or face consequences. And, after the ceasefire was signed, the King of Jordan did a Crimea River dance over on the BBC, threatening that, quote unquote, on, I think it's called Panorama, the show on BBC, you can look it up on YouTube. He was threatening that unless the Palestinian state is established, the world is doomed, his world. So he was very, very sad, very angry that the ceasefire took place.
Right, but then that sounds to me like he doesn't feel that threatened by Trump if he's making those statements.
He can do whatever he wants, but he can no longer get his intelligence department to call Hamas terrorists and warn them where to go and where not to go, and facilitate their travel to Turkey, and facilitate many other things which I can't even speak about.
Are you saying that Trump can basically stop those things from happening, even if he wants them to happen? The King of Jordan.
Trump has already stopped that. The next move now, which is going to take time, is getting Hamas out of Gaza for good, and then going for two things: chopping the head of the snake, the Muslim Brotherhood, and establishing a Palestinian homeland. These are national interests for the United States. These are not ledger ideas.
My perception is not like that of most Brits who fall for the sort of the BBC propaganda. I'm convinced, maybe you can convince me otherwise, that the vast majority of Gazans, almost their objective, the only thing that makes them feel alive is the promise that they can destroy the Jewish state. This is the only thing that they seem to be able to live for. That's everything that I see coming out of there, which is not BBC propaganda, points to that. So how are they going to get rid of, you might be able to get rid of the some of the Hamas leaders, but these are people who've been indoctrinated by the Hamas-supported UNRWA since birth, and it's continuing, and even that doesn't seem to be stopping. So how are you ever going to I can't see any way that these people are ever going to accept anything which stops that ultimate radicalism, which is defined by this determination to eliminate the Jewish state.
How many Gazans do you personally know?
I've personally spoken to a few in the UK, but that's about all. So they're not, again, not representative.
So you do not, both one academic to another, you don't have a sample big enough or good enough to generalize the findings.
I don't know. And of course, there's massive bias. I'm subject to massive bias myself. That's why I'm hoping that you can convince me.
That's why with me,
that I'm wrong.
With me, you get the good, bad, and the ugly. You will never, this is no ego perpetrated here. Israel will never have another leader like Mudar Zahran, because I am the only Palestinian leader you will see with Jewish relatives living in Israel. I'm a Muslim Palestinian, Jordanian. I've got Jewish relatives in Israel, and I've got Muslim Arab relatives in Israel. So I bleed on both sides when one of them bleeds. That's it. With me, you get the good, bad, and the ugly. The ugly is the people's opinions in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. I've visited those people multiple times. I've got relatives. Those are the indoctrinated ones. And let me be clear, if the people in the West Bank are given a chance to have a go on the Jews, they would put Hamas to shame.
Yeah.
They would make Hamas look like child's play, what they did on the 7th of October. So that's the ugly. The good is the majority of Gazans, I can authoritatively confirm, hate Hamas with a passion, and they've hated them before the 7th of October. In 2006 elections, the Palestinians almost unanimously voted for Hamas. My Christian Palestinian friend and her husband, she's Christian, and she still voted for Hamas. They were pissed with the Palestinian Authority, corruption, intimidation, and on top of it, Hamas was carrying out terror attacks, which they viewed as entertainment revenge. So whenever Hamas kills, in one occasion, 8 children in one go with the Sparrow restaurant, it was entertaining, to see the Jews bleeding. So for them, they voted because Hamas was going to get rid of the Jews eventually. And at the same time, Hamas is Islamic, for God-fearing, so they will not steal the money like the Palestinian Authority does. Fast forward 2 years, not even a year, not even 3 or 4 or 5 or a decade, actually a year, Hamas carried out a coup, butchered civilians in Gaza just because they were affiliated with Fatah, dropped them off, 30-story buildings, off the top of those skyscrapers, Gazan tall buildings, whatever. And Hamas, after that, continued to rule the Gaza Strip with an iron fist. They turned out to be way more corrupt than the Palestinian Authority, because and these are, by the way, not my words. These are the words of Gazans. And I've got relatives in Gaza, by the way, from my mother's side, Abu Beit Lahi area. So Hamas, would kill you and call you an infidel if you even criticize them, not only stand against them. If you oppose them, they call you an infidel and they kill you. Hamas' signature assault was they point the machine gun to your knees and they shoot a whole, magazine into each kneecap, so you lose both legs. You get them both amputated. This you can look up on the internet, watch videos and testimonies.
Yeah, I've seen.
So Hamas proved to them to be a monster who made them even poorer and hurt them even more. And at the same time, guess what? Did the Jews go anywhere? They thrived. So they learned, quickly, like within few years, that Hamas was all talk and worse than anything else. So fast forward, the generation that was born under Hamas. Hamas in Gaza was a whole apparatus of a government. They are 120,000 people, between school teachers up to the prime minister of Hamas. They were getting everything for them, all the luxury, houses, foods, job, 24-hour electricity. And you add the families to them, and you're talking 500,000 people. And then you have 1.5 million Gazans, more or less, that have nothing. Those people, if they have a go on Hamas, they would, butcher Hamas members alive. They would lynch them. They would burn them alive. I can authoritatively say, talking to them even before the 7th of October and after, the Gazans are not the problem. The problem is in the West Bank. On the other hand, the largest number of Palestinians anywhere in the world is in Jordan. And the Palestinians in Jordan state government, state propaganda, they demand protest against Israel, against the Israeli embassy. 11 million Palestinians, less than 1,000 show up. There's a U.S. embassy cable leaked by WikiLeaks, a U.S. embassy Amman cable, and I used to work for the U.S. embassy in Amman, which shows that Palestinians in Jordan, quote unquote, are not interested in the right of return / Palestine. They are interested in having civil rights in Jordan. So hotspot, problematic spots, West Bank. Gazans are not the problem. Besides, let me just say this. We are not talking about democracy anywhere in the region and any kind of democratic system for the Palestinians at the moment. 30 years from now, when we have installed a 30-year-long re-education system, yeah. Change in Jordan, we're going to bring a benevolent, authoritative regime, which will share the money and the wealth with the people and make Jordan a beloved and favored destination for Palestinians, because there will be a welfare system, everything in the book that's already in Israel. And the world will support us for that. And Arab countries will have to support us for that, to get that done. But we're not going to give them democracy, because I always keep saying this, making this statement. Democracy in Jordan, or for the Palestinians today, is like giving the keys of a Rolls-Royce Phantom to an 18-year-old who just got their driver's license. A very, very stupid idea.
Okay, right. I want to come on to that, the Judea-Samaria issue, in a minute. But before that, as you say, you've got 500,000 Hamas people out of the 2 million in Gaza. And those 500,000 are the ones who essentially have all of the current weapons and control. And they are ruthlessly, even after the ceasefire, making sure that that control is known and enforced. What exactly is going to change, and when?
The conditions, the stipulations that Hamas gives up weapons. They're not going to give up all the weapons. Also, the options given to Hamas leaders to leave. They've been given options to 4 different countries. I can disclose 2, but not 4. One of them is Turkey, and the second is Malaysia. And one of them is a Western country. They were given the chance to leave with their families. 200 top leaders, and not to mention the very senior leaders are already outside, but the 200 top leaders are given the chance to leave with some generous offers, like a house, a car, and a $250,000 US. This is inside information from my sources, which I know is true. And already some Hamas leaders are already leaving. Hamas can do a lot of bark, but very little biting at the moment. And as for the 500,000 people, the foreign forces, which will be international forces introduced, the British forces will play a very major role in this. The U.S. Central Command will be involved with their intelligence abilities and the satellites and all their surveillance techniques. The major players will be the Pakistani and the Indonesian soldiers. So those, will play a major part in controlling the population. Not to mention that the Hamas leaders will leave with their families. So once we get rid of the top 200, also there are other very active and well equipped anti-Hamas militias now in Gaza. The Abu Shabab militias, the Zumlut militias. Hamas vowed to kill them, to wipe them out the first 48 hours after the ceasefire. Well, it's been a few days and nothing has happened. There has been
Well, we saw them. They did wipe out quite a lot of one clan, didn't they, including children?
They attacked. They went after the weakest link, and they attacked the Doghmash clan, and it didn't pay off. The Doghmash clan responded, took revenge, killed up to 20 something Hamas terrorists. So Hamas, the old days where they could execute someone in front of his family, like they did before the 7th of October, they would, one of my friends, they killed her father right in front of the family because they suspected him of something, not even evidence. The days where Hamas could literally carry out field executions are gone.
But okay, well, I don't understand, because we've been seeing exactly that in the last few days.
Not many. They've been going after the weakest people.
Okay.
They have not been able to inflict any damage, any serious damage to opposing militias.
Okay,
so they want to instill fear in the hearts of the people by going after the people in the areas that already control, people who have nothing, no factions, no militia affiliation, just to scare people off.
Okay, but you're still now placing a lot of confidence in these foreign forces to enforce the peace, to disarm Hamas. What's the evidence from previous such foreign interventions, especially multilateral interventions like that this ever actually works and achieves the objectives that have been stated?
Yes. When Trump decided in his first term, when the scourge of ISIS has been, unbeatable, taking over one area after another. Trump himself narrates the story best, is when he spoke to army generals and they told him, we'll need 5 years. And then he spoke to a field general and told, well, 2 weeks. Hamas, literally, ISIS was wiped out for 3 weeks, in 3 weeks, while Obama couldn't deal with it. Actually, they started it during Bush time, and I, working for the U.S. Department of State, had to deal with that issue as a part of my job. The ISIS started at Bush time. Almighty Bush, almighty Obama couldn't do anything to them because they didn't want to. This is why they created a mess out of Iraq and turned it into an Iranian vassal. They turned Afghanistan into a Chinese puppet state and handed all the wealth of Afghanistan to China in a silver platter and empowered the terrorists in Afghanistan. And this was all by design. None of it was stupidity or this is a lack of good intentions. One thing stands, though, that all the bets we are doing, we barely have 36 months to carry them out. So you are right about a very critical timeline. On the other hand, the intentions of this administration, the intentions of the current administration of the CIA is a very important player, and the intentions of the current leadership of the CIA is very well. CIA director is a very nice man, him and his people, at the moment. So how long can we finish before the president time is up? Before this administration is done? We can only hope for the best and keep our fingers crossed. But for the time being, you need to identify what's going on the ground. No, the sky has not fallen. Hamas is not going to retake Gaza. Hamas will be forced to drop down their weapons, whether they like it or whether they would like an arrangement on the Hell Express. They're both coming.
Okay, I've got two last questions because we need to finish by 6. The first, the last one's going to be about Judea and Samaria, but before that, one
How
question.
about one about Jordan?
Yeah, well, that presumably is going to come in the last question about Judea and Samaria. I'm assuming. Well, anyway, okay, but one before that, I want to know the answer, what your insights are about that attack in Doha, which you spoke about, the Israeli attack. How was it that actually all the Hamas leaders survived, that they somehow got out of that? That must purely have been all part of the theatre. I can't imagine that that could have happened by pure good luck for those leaders, that they just happened to be out of the room when the strike happened.
Well, all the stories I heard on the media are like rather cartoonish and funny. One major Hamas leader, my sources confirm, has died, and I tweeted that 15 minutes after the attack. Khalid Mishal, the Jordanian Hamas leader, Khalid Mishal, was gone.
Sorry, what can you saying Khalid Mashal was killed?
That's what the reports say.
I thought he was seen at subsequent meetings.
The ones in the meetings are Khalil al-Hayya and Musa Abu Marzouk. Abu Marzouk, and this is classified, but I'm going to share it. Not classified, but it's internal knowledge. The main purpose of the shooting, the bombing, was Musa Abu Marzouk. Musa Abu Marzouk is U.S. educated, has spent a good 20 years of his life in the United States, holds a PhD, incredibly smart and incredibly evil. Musa Abu Marzouk is the key Hamas leader, and we would have hoped that he was the one who was going to be taken out. So were they tipped off? Very, very possible. But on the other hand, it's the way let's just say there are superpowers working on their behalf, and they are very, very close to certain superpowers which could get the intel about it. I'll give you an example. When the Israeli soldiers started rolling their tanks and drones into Gaza after the 7th of October, there was jamming into their devices and electronic systems caused by what could have only been satellite or very advanced jamming. That could have only come from one of two superpowers, China or Russia.
Right.
So I won't say who, but I'll leave it to your imagination which one of those two is actually siding with Hamas.
Yeah.
And who may have tipped them off prior to the attack.
Okay. So my last question then, and you can expand about the Jordan question here, because I'm sure it must be related. This ugliness that you described about the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, how is that going to be resolved in a way that will not result in a far worse attack than October the 7th on Israel?
Okay, the answer is in the Arabic language. إن الله لا يزع بالسلطان ما لا يزع بالقرآن. God enforces his will through the sword more than he enforces his will through the Quran. In other words, the reason they do that, and they would do that, is they could get away with it at the moment. Under a local administration from the new Jordanian state, under a new arrangement for the Palestinian Authority, which will see Israel annexing a huge part of the West Bank, and which will see the Palestinian Authority being reshaped and actually limited into barely local civil services, like the town hall, or what you call a borough in this country, county services.
Yeah,
not an
borough.
authority, not a state, not sovereignty.
A local borough, yeah.
Yeah. A local borough. This is what's coming for there. And let me just give you an idea. The trouble spots in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank are are Jenin refugee camp, Nablus or Shechem refugee camp, Mukhayam Balata, and the third one is Mukhayam Tul Karam, to which Queen Rani of Jordan belongs. These are the problem spots. 100,000 people. I can authoritatively tell everyone these people will end up in Jordan in the very, very foreseen future, possibly the next 2 or 3 years. All of them are leaving to Jordan. And then a whole new apparatus or system is going to be installed and will be installed, which will involve Jordan. Let me explain. Any Palestinian statehood west of the river is not going to work, and it's going to only bring more bloodshed and disaster for both sides. In addition, even if it was the most peaceful utopia Palestinian state, that Palestinian state will need a geographic, economic, social, political, and defense access. So it's going to either be going to become a burden on the Jewish state, or it could have that exit point through Jordan. Jordan is the alpha and the omega. All roads lead to Jordan. The Al-Aqsa Mosque temple problem is caused by the Jordanian Waqf. The right of return is not being solved because Palestinians in Lebanon, Syria, Algeria, Egypt, and elsewhere, and even Gaza, are not being allowed to return to Jordan as per the Jordanian Citizenship Act itself, which recognizes every Palestinian as a Jordanian. So today, if I was in power, 2 million Gazans will have the right to return to Jordan. So Trump, you and everyone else, and Gazans themselves would not have to suffer. This won't happen because they have a Saudi man controlling 78% of British mandate for Palestine. Make Jordan Palestinian again. The Palestinians in Israel and Judea and Samaria, nobody in their right mind would seek the eviction or the ethnic cleansing of those, but they can be residents of Israel, not citizens of Israel. Here's the kicker before I go. The terrorists that were released just days ago, you realize 80% of them hold Jordanian citizenships. Why were they returned to the West Bank and Gaza? Why weren't they returned back home to Jordan? To save the trouble for everyone, including the wrong communities.
Why?
Right? Because the king of Jordan would not accept them. Why wouldn't he accept them? He's opening his TV, his state government positions, his army to radicals. All 4 major terror attacks that took place at the borders over the past few years were by Jordanian soldiers. So it's not because he doesn't like terrorists. It's because he wants to keep the problem inside Israel, working at both ends against the middle. This is my promise.
Yeah.
You will witness the change in Jordan. I don't care when it's going to happen. It will happen. And then, for the first time, both our people will know peace. In my case, both are my people. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. That's very, very optimistic, and hopefully we'll speak again. And there's lots more in-depth discussions about this that I'd like to ask you another time. Thank you.